Standard-based grading is a rather new grading scale where 90% of your grade comes from the tests you take, and 10% comes from the quizzes and homework or schoolwork you do. In this quote, assessment test scores were used as common items to adjust for different grading standards. This is one of the ways in which standard-based grading was made. Another way this grading scale was made is from the quote, ACT tested students. So they took the test scores of those students and used them as a basis to make standard-based grading. The only problem with this is not all students have taken the ACT, especially not the freshmen. We are held to a much higher standard than we are prepared for, and we do not need to be held to. These are just some of the reasons that I do not agree with this grading scale. I have done research over the construction of standard-based grading and many other grading scales, and this quote says that it is a response to many of the issues in education. It also says that students could do all the homework and classwork and not even learn the content because this work would boost enough the grade to pass. So even if they fail the test, they would still be able to go on to the next grade the following year. Although this may be true, they also must have the will and want to know the content. So even if 90% of the grade is based on a test, they must want to do well on a test and study for it. Some students just not care enough to study or even try hard on a test or quiz. So even with standard-based grading, this would not change. It only helps them fail faster and much, much easier. Another subject which my source has brought to my attention is that students and parents complain that the child was not ready for what came after high school. Well, first off, high school cannot 100% prepare you for what the real world is like. You must learn to do things on your own, and even if you do not have the will and want to do better in school, then you will not have the will and want to do better in life. A quote from another one of my sources says that percentage grading scale aims for academic failure. So are you saying the grading scale that is supposed to be helping us are actually making us more likely to fail a class? But when we ask people such questions, they always say, you can remediate. Well, if I didn't fail the first time, then I wouldn't need to remediate. So in my opinion, if students are better prepared for the test, then we would not fail and would not have to remediate. Another interesting quote I have found from the same article is that percentage grading scale is hard to defend from procedural, practical, or ethical perspective. So those who do not agree or like this grading scale do not speak of how bad and horrible it really is. They cannot actually defend this grading scale based on the facts they deny exist. So taking these tests where 90% of our grade is dependent on them is very stressful and causes much anxiety, frustration, anger, and stress. It is not fair to do that to these students. It just makes it even harder for us and does not make us want to come to school. With the points I have confronted, the most common excuse or rebuttal is that we can remediate. But again, if we are properly taught the material the first time and held to a better grading scale where quizzes and schoolwork are graded properly, then we could do better and be better prepared for the tests. Many people say things to defend standard-based grading, such as you can remediate. It holds teachers to higher standards. It is an easier grading scale to understand and follow. And these are just some of the reasons people like the grading scale. But for remediation, if I were properly taught the first time, I would not need to remediate. Teachers are not held to a higher standard. It may be easier to follow, but is not nearly as reliable as another grading scale. If we change to a more ethical grading scale, then maybe the seniors who have worked so hard for the past 4 years to earn their diploma will have a much better chance of graduating and being able to continue with their lives and understand the hard work has paid off. These are just a few of the issues of standard-based grading and why we should change to a different and more ethical grading scale.